Hey, what's up everybody? It's Joe with J Blake Photo. Today's video, I want to talk about the Canon EOS R3, some of the spec information that we have, and where it has been seen in the wild. All right, before we get into the info on the R3, just real quick plug for the channel. If you're interested in gear, photography, videography, drones, action cameras, and travel photography, landscapes, and that sort of stuff, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you want to be notified when I do a new video, hit the bell when you hit the subscribe button. And if you like videos like this, where we talk about some of the rumory-ish stuff that's out there about new gear, go ahead and give this a thumbs up. That is a huge help to me and to the channel. I don't have a brand sponsorship, but I like talking to all of you, and hitting that thumbs up button, hitting subscribe, and hitting the bell really helps to spread awareness of the channel. So thank you so much. If you are interested in stills photography, specifically landscapes, go ahead and find me over on Instagram. I have a whole backlog of photos that I need to be posting, so I apologize if you're a follower already. I haven't been super active on that platform recently. I've got a ton of stuff from my recent trips that I'm gonna be putting on there. I've got stuff from Zion, I've got stuff from California, I've got stuff from here in Nevada. I'm gonna be going to Maui at the end of the summer. Double vaxxed, finally able to fly, leaving in August, super excited. That's enough about the channel. Let's go ahead and talk about the info on this camera. A lot of the info that we've had for a couple of weeks, but I wanted to go over it, so some of this stuff isn't gonna be new. But if you watch my channel for a while, you know that on some of this stuff, I've got some thoughts. So number one, on the stills side of things, as this is going to be a big body professional camera for sport, wildlife photography, fast action, that sort of thing. This is gonna have a 30 frame per second electronic shutter. I don't think we've seen the mechanical number. Maybe it's 12 to 20, similar to what we have on the R5 and the R6. I can tell you that I was just recently out with the R6 and was able to really take advantage of the speed. I've been using the electronic shutter, shooting at 20 frames per second, fast moving subjects, and you get a little bit of that rolling shutter wobble, but haven't really experienced too much of an issue with it. More on that with the R3 in just a second. So we've got that 30 frame per second electronic shutter. We're going to have 8 stops of image stabilization. So it'll have that built-in image stabilizer, that 5-axis image stabilizer that we have in the R6 and the R5. And when coupled with a RF lens that has that high bandwidth connection to the processor, that also has IS, you'll get up to 8 stops of image stabilization, which is huge. Autofocus down to -7 EV. Who is shooting at -7 EV? So basically you shoot in the dark, which is nuts, which means that whatever sensor they do put on here, it will definitely have some awesome autofocus. The autofocus system on the sensor has been described in some cases as enhanced dual pixel AF version 2, and some have described it as quad pixel autofocus. We don't really know. If you've got a definite answer on that, go ahead and point me to that down in the comments. I haven't seen for sure whether or not it's going to be an enhanced version of dual pixel AF, or if they're going to introduce a new AF platform in this quad pixel that we keep hearing about. But we do know that the autofocus system, whether it's dual pixel or quad pixel or however they end up describing it, it will have additional learning built in. So the deep learning that's already in the R5 and the R6 for things like animals, things like people, eyes, heads, that sort of stuff, it kind of just snaps to stuff, right? And it does a really, really good job at that it's going to be adding things like vehicles and aircraft specifically. And I'm excited to see if they can add those types of things down the line to this camera and develop additional areas where the camera can identify specific objects or types of objects. Now that 30 frame per second electronic shutter is going to be dumping out to dual card slots, of course, and similar to the R5, these are going to be an SD card and CF Express. Just put CF Express in both slots, make it B, make it SD as a backup. If that's all you got, please, Canon, please. Now, before we move on and talk about the video aspect of this, I want to talk a little bit about the sensor. We don't know. There were rumors first that it wasn't a Canon sensor, that it was going to be developed by Sony, Then there were rumors that it would be 85 megapixels, then 60 megapixels, then 50 megapixels, that it was going to be 20 megapixels. And now we're hearing the rumor that it's going to be 30 megapixels. Now this thing is out in the wild. It was spotted at the G7 summit this weekend, and people were using it. We don't know how many different versions of this there are. There might be versions in the wild that have an 85 or a 90 or a 60 or a 50 or a 20 or a 30 or a 24 megapixel sensor. There might be versions out there that have a Sony sensor and some with a Canon sensor. I don't know if they would do that kind of at this stage in the game, but that may have been something that they toyed with in the past. My hope is that they're close to production and they know what they're going to put in it. But we just don't know about the sensor. It's interesting that we have all of this information, and Canon has been pretty open about talking about this camera, but we don't know what the sensor is. And I think that's because they don't know either, or at least if they do know, you know, they didn't finalize that decision until very, very recently. My hope is for slightly higher resolution, at least 30. My expectation is somewhere between 34 and 40 megapixels on the low end. I'm hoping for something more like 45 to 60. But if in the long run we end up seeing that it doesn't shoot 8K, if it's just 4K, then it could be 20 megapixels. You know, in the production information that we have, it talks about 4K being oversampled. If it's oversampled, then maybe it's 5.1, 5.4K, similar to the R6 that I'm on now, which is a phenomenal image. But again, we don't know. We do know that it is a backside illuminated sensor, which gets it as close as possible to the, you know, kind of the holy grail of electronic shutters as a global shutter, meaning every pixel, right? Every sensor pixel flashes at the same time. This is still going to roll, but hopefully it will do so as quickly as possible, again, to reduce that rolling shutter effect, though I haven't experienced that really at all on the R6. But as we transition into talking about the video side of things, right? So we know 4K for sure. We also know that it's going to shoot RAW, though resolution has not specifically been mentioned. And we know that it will shoot in log 3, which will match it with the R5, not the R6 Canon, but it will match it with the R5 so that you can use it as a B cam or use it with the Cinema Line cameras that are shooting with Cinema Log 3. There's also some rumors about it having like a pixel shift technology. I don't know so much about that. It might have it, but again, this camera is predominantly going to be sports, wildlife, action stuff. I'm not really sure how pixel shift is going to work in that instance. You know, traditionally pixel shift is used for things like non-moving subjects. Correct me if I'm wrong, for Sony shooters out there, or anybody who's used the Sony tech that does this, how well does it work with a moving subject? Even like a model, right? So if you're doing studio shooting, how well does it work if you're actually shooting someone in the studio who could just kind of move just a little bit versus like architecture, landscapes, you know, stellar stuff like that. So I'm very curious. Well, I guess even stellar photography, right? Stars are going to move. Anyway, if you know anything about that, tell me down in the comments. I'm super curious. And then because of the fact that it is going to be because it is an R3, right? It's got that big body. One of the advantages of the big bodies are that it has a lot of features, right? There's a lot in there. So you're going to have super fast Wi-Fi, awesome weather sealing, that giant battery that lasts for 1,000 shots, and also delivers probably the amount of voltage necessary to run this camera, especially at that 30 frame per second. You need to be able to pull a lot of power at one time to do that, especially with this new sensor. Also, just the fact that it will have this bigger body will probably mean we won't have any overheating issues. There'll be a lot of material inside that camera to allow a lot of space to allow that heat to dissipate. Plus, they probably learned a little bit on the R5, right? Maybe they took to heart some of those YouTube videos where people tore the R5 apart and put actual copper zinc plates on the chip and used thermal paste. Amazing, to try to dissipate some of that heat. Maybe they learned a little bit there and they're applying some of those techniques. And also, it's going to have the multi-touch button that we got on the 1DX Mark III, as well as the little joystick, and it's going to be on both sides, which is super cool. So as you turn it, you'll have it, you know, both for portrait and landscape shooting. There's a new port up at the top, a new accessory shoe, which I'm sure will support things like, you know, more advanced speed lights for maybe improved sync times. Maybe we'll see, you know, we have heard that it will work through the electronic shutter with speed lights, but we don't know the specifics on that yet. And maybe microphones similar to what Sony did. So more and more of this picture is starting to come into focus. You see what I did there? But the two things that we don't know, the resolution on the sensor and the price. We know it's not a flagship camera, but real quick, I want to address that. Everybody keeps kind of bringing up, oh, it's not a 1, right? It's not going to be the R1. This isn't the R1. It's not the flagship. That is marketing. This could have been the flagship 20 minutes before they announced it. And then they decided, you know, oh wait, we want to try to leapfrog Sony, or we want to do this, or it's all run by marketing. The decision to call something the R5 and R6, or the R3, or the R1, or the 90D, or the iPhone 10R or 10S, or that's a marketing decision. It has zero to do with the camera itself. Now, traditionally, the EOS, you know, the D3s that we used to have, it's all marketing. So don't worry about it being a flagship or not a flagship. They say it's not a flagship, that doesn't mean it's not going to cost $7,000. It could. And then the R1 could cost $7,500. It doesn't matter, because if they think somebody's going to buy it and their marketing team says it's going to be worth that price, people are going to buy it. And if not, people will vote with their pocketbooks, or in this case, large journalism organizations who are mostly the ones who are going to be buying this camera, and freelancers who work for those organizations. They will vote with their pocketbooks and decide whether or not this is going to be worth it if it comes in at $6,000. Is it going to be an Alpha 1 killer? I don't know that these two cameras really address the same market, but it will be interesting to see those two go head to head, assuming that all of these specs end up being what we get in the long run. Everything we know, that's everything we're learning. Again, it's in the wild. It was seen at the G7 summit this weekend. Don't worry about if it's a flagship or not. But let me know down in the comments, is this a camera that you care about at all? Or are you just a Canon person and you love to see the next new thing? Maybe tech from this will find its way down into newer versions of cameras in the future. You know, but is this something that you actually see yourself buying or using? Or is it just something that you like following, like your favorite sports team? Let me know down in the comments. How many megapixels is this thing going to be? Let me know. What do you think? And how much is it going to cost? I'm just curious to see. Maybe I'll throw a poll up on my channel. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Again, check me out on Instagram. I'm over at jblakePhoto, landscape photos, stuff like that. I've got a whole bunch of photos that I'm going to post soon. I gotta finish putting them all in one place. Hit subscribe, hit like, hit the bell. I promise I will not spam you with videos, except maybe this week. All right, thanks. I'll see you in the next one.